let's generate our motivation. Our bodhichitta needs to extend to each and every sentient being without omitting even one of them, in order for us to have actual bodhicitta. And without that actual bodhicitta, full awakening is impossible. So our awakening depends on each and every unique sentient being. And as the object of our compassion and our altruistic intention. So that means that we have to deal with our upset or anger or aversion that we may have for any living being, no matter what they've done. And one way to do that is, instead of faulting the sentient being for whatever they did, is to fault what controls the sentient being, which is their afflictions. So think of one or more people that you really have a hard time with. And instead of getting upset with them or disgusted by them, think of the ignorance, the self-centeredness, the various afflictions that control that sentient being and make them act in ways that not only harm us, but harm themselves. And in that way, have compassion for somebody who is overwhelmed by self-grasping ignorance, self-centered thought. And in that way, make our bodhicitta even stronger and more determined. Because all these sentient beings overwhelmed by afflictions really need the Buddha Dharma. And if we can be a conduit to them, from the Dharma to them, or a conduit from them for them to meet the Dharma, maybe not in this life, but in future lives, then that would be quite amazing if we could do that. So we're on chapter 3, in the middle of a series of verses where we are making aspirations to be exactly what sentient beings need in any particular moment, to lead them on the path and to make these aspirations, as impossible sounding as they are, so that when we have the opportunity to help, there's no lack of energy or no hesitation on our part to do that, because the mind has generated these aspirations. And when we really think about these aspirations, I don't know about you, but they fill my heart with an incredible feeling of joy to just even aspire like this or imagine like this. So I've had this great opportunity to practice this as an antidote. I don't know how many of you watched the news last night, but Bob Woodward, he was one of the journalists who worked a lot on the Nixon, and revealed what was really going on with Nixon that led to Nixon's resignation. So he's doing a second book about Trump. And he's done 18 interviews recorded on tape with Trump. And what it turns out is, from an interview some interviews earlier in this year, is Trump said that even in January and February, that he knew the coronavirus was deadly, that he knew it was serious, that he knew it could be spread in the air, not just by touching objects. And he said that, if you remember what he said to all of us then, was, it's like the flu, it's not serious, it'll go away very quickly, and it's the Chinese fault because they sent it here to us. So as it comes out, he actually knew way back then how serious this was and how deadly it could be. And yet he lied to all of us. The reason being, he said, is he didn't want to create panic. And we need to express confidence so that people don't get alarmed. As a result, nobody took precautions. Many people, if you'll remember, Fox News was saying it was a hoax. Many people said it was a hoax. They're still saying it's a hoax. People not seeing how serious it is. Meanwhile, 190,000 Americans have died, at least that number. Many more, actually, but it hasn't been counted. So 190,000 people in this country died because he didn't want to tell people the truth so that we could be prepared. When you're a leader in that situation, you have to tell the truth and how dire it is, but then bring people together and give them a sense of working together and confidence so that they can do something about this. And that's not what happened. And as a result, so many people died. So when I read this, I didn't get angry. I had this feeling that I don't remember having very much in my life, of complete disgust of how could a human being do that? You know, when just beyond me, how could somebody lie like that, knowing that it would lead to so much suffering and so many deaths? So it was a very good practice, yeah, because of this way of meditating, which is from Shantideva, yeah, of look at what was motivating the person instead of the person itself. You know, the person was controlled by something else. So what needs to be stopped is what was controlling the person. And so to really think, you know, here he was, the amount of ignorance, the amount of self-centeredness is stupendous, you know, to lie to a whole country, you know, putting people in danger like that. And so to use that to say, you know, this is due to self-grasping ignorance, self-centered thought. And those two things exist in my mind too. So rather than hating somebody or whatever, or being mad, having disgust at ignorance and self-centeredness, you know, the two things that come out in the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, you know, that to hold those as what we trample on and destroy, okay, instead of the person who is afflicted by that. And so that as one way to deal with the sense of just beyond horror, beyond shock, beyond disgust. And also to see that those things exist in my mind. And who knows what I would do if I were put into some other situation where I wanted to protect myself, you know, and didn't care about how many other people suffered or about breaking my responsibility to other people who were counting on me. Yeah? So it's a very good opportunity to practice, okay? So these are the exact kind of opportunities that the thought training teaching talks about when it talks about this world being, you know, having the 5 degenerations and the necessity of transforming adversity into the path. This is exactly what, you know, the Kadampa Geshis were talking about, what Nagarjuna was talking about. He's the actual source of these teachings. So this is what we have to practice. Yeah? And if we practice it now, the imprints left in our mind can be very strong, that can really help us deal with many more, even severe situations that we may experience, not only in this life, but future lives. Yeah, because if we are bodhisattva wannabes, then there's a lot we need to do to prepare our mind to do that. Bodhisattvas aren't just, you know, little fairy angels that go around blessing people, snapping their fingers and solving problems. Bodhisattvas, the way they benefit is to manifest in the realms of the sentient beings and through their interactions with them to lead them on the path. So you have to have a very strong mind to be able to do that. It's not just, kind of being goody two-shoes or something like that. Yeah. So these situations are Bodhisattva boot camp for us. Yeah. So rather than shy away from them, we need to deal with them. Yeah. And so not only to be able to deal with it, but to actually then turn around and make a bodhisattva aspiration. So not just deal with our disgust or shock or whatever, but to make a good bodhisattva aspiration about it, like the ones that we've been reading in chapter 3. Okay, let me read a few of those to get us in the mood, so to speak, and then we can start doing that. So may I be the doctor, the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Yeah, appropriate for a pandemic, isn't it? Yeah. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain and thirst and hunger, the pain of thirst and hunger. And during the eon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. So they said, how many percent of American families? 1 out of 8, yeah, don't have enough food now. Okay. May I become so we think, may I become that food, yeah? May I start a food bank? May I, lead an NGO that gets food to refugees? Okay. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all things they could need and be placed close beside them. So a refugee camp in Greece just burned down. Yeah. I don't know how many people were in it, quite a few. So where are the people going to go? So, that verse applies to them. So without any sense of loss, I shall give up my body and enjoyments, as well as all my virtues of the 3 times, for the sake of benefiting all. So just completely give without holding anything back. Because as soon as we hold something back, then there's attachment, there's clinging, there's going to be pain. Yeah. If we just give all that up, then, and there's no attachment, then there's not going to be any pain at all when giving and sharing. So I started to think, what kind of aspiration would a bodhisattva make in this kind of situation with the news? And when I think of politics, it's like leadership of countries. It's one of the last things I would want to do or be. But if you're going to be a bodhisattva, you better get used to doing and being what sentient beings need, not what you feel like doing. And so I thought, may I be a leader for people, for countries in dire situations and lead them through difficulties by telling them the truth and giving them encouragement and, helping them make preparations and so on. And when I was thinking like that, okay, that's my way of dealing with it. It was like, oh, I don't want to be a politician in power. It's like, ugh. But then it's like, well, these people are suffering. And would you rather have somebody who lies to them, even though they know how serious it is? Would you rather have that, or would you rather step up to the plate and do something? So then, there's no choice to make. You got to step up to the plate. Yeah. So it just, I'm not going to be a politician this life, but just even thinking about it, thinking about having to deal with all of that and the people involved, just even overcoming that is a step going in the right direction. If we're going to pray to be whatever sentient beings need at any particular moment, then, to try and at least imagine our overcoming our reticence and hesitation and feeling about doing certain things. Okay? So these teachings are incredibly practical. And if people wonder, because they always do, and we get many questions, why do bodhisattvas make aspirations that are impossible to keep? This is why, because we have to do it to make our mind strong, to expand. The first step, even being able to imagine doing things that we can't imagine ourselves doing right now. And then slowly from there, learning how to do them, which when we become Arya Bodhisattvas, we'll have to do that. Okay? So verse 11 here, where it says, without any sense of loss, I shall give up my body and enjoyments, as well as all my virtues of the 3 times, for the sake of benefiting all. So that's like the giving practice in the taking and giving practice. We give our body possessions and virtue, imagining they become whatever other sentient beings need, and then imagining sentient beings' needs being fulfilled. And for me, the first phrase, without any sense of loss, that's a really crucial phrase, because, if we have a sense of loss, then we're not really able to completely and fully give. Part of the mind is tight. And that's painful. And that inhibits really having a generous mind. So to really have that feeling of, I've got, at the time of death, I have got to give up everything anyway. So if I give it up a little bit earlier, it's okay. Because I can't hold on to it forever, and it's got to be given up. And it makes me come back to Nagarjuna talking to the king in Precious Garland, where he said, and this was just involving wealth and not even giving your body and virtue, but when he said to the king, you have, storehouses full with jewels and wealth, And when you die, all your ministers are going to divvy it up and give it to the next king, or give it to the next king, or bribe the next king so that they can have a high position. And you're going to go on alone without all your wealth. So why are you holding it onto it? It's sitting in a storehouse and you're not even using it to start with. Yeah, it just gives you a sense of security to have it in the storehouse. And then you're going to have to give it up without even using it. And other people are going to use it for their own selfish needs. So Nagarjuna said to him, you need to, if you believe in karma, you need to give now so that you can at least use your wealth to create some merit, create some virtue that will benefit you when you go on to your next life. Yeah, rather than clinging on to these things that you're not even using, that you can't take with you. Yeah, that are the objects you create so much negative karma defending. Yeah, better to use these things to create virtue. Yeah, and it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, so I'm starting with the little containers that I save, and we each have our own thing that we cling on to, okay? Maybe it's a little supply of chocolate, or it's, a blanket, or a pair of shoes, or who knows what, yeah? And, we start small. Maybe it's those red red glass offering bowls, whatever it is we're holding on to practice, use those things as practice to really help us. Yeah. Because my experience is that before I give it, there's so much clinging and I don't want to. But as soon as I give it, I hardly ever think about it again. Yeah. When we had that assignment of, giving away something we were very attached to, and I gave away that picture of His Holiness, it's like I don't really think about it very much. And occasionally I see it around the Abbey somewhere, and I go, oh yeah, that's that picture. And it's such a beautiful picture of him. But it's like, I don't need to possess that. Yeah. Just the image of it is good enough. I don't need to possess it. Okay. So it is so interesting to watch how our mind works. I don't know about you, but people have different ways of dealing with grief. And some people grieve after the event happens. I do what's called anticipatory grief. Okay, so I know something's coming, so I do all my grieving beforehand. Yeah, so that then when it comes, I'm okay. So when I had to move out of the writing studio, I had lived there 12 years, so much of my life. That was longer than I think, except for my childhood home. No, actually, it was as long as I lived in my childhood home. Otherwise, I had never lived anywhere in any building at all for that length of time, And so, there it was with the willow tree, and I have such a connection with the willow tree and the Kuan Yin statue under it, and just the feeling of the writing studio, and and I had to go through this whole grieving process, Yeah, it wasn't like, oh goody, I get to move into Prajna Cottage and have running water. It was like, oh, I have to leave the writing studio and my compost toilet and my lack of running water. You know, I mean, this is how strange the mind is. But, so I do my anticipatory grief. And then, once I move, I'm fine. It's like, okay, gone, finished. Yeah. And, So quite interesting. Check your mind, do you grieve afterwards? Do you grieve before? Or do you not grieve at all because your mind isn't, having any kind of, making any kind of story about the person or the situation or the object? Both? We stay in a perpetual state of fear of losing. Yeah. And like, wow, here we have a precious human life with so much potential. And then what do we focus our mind on? Yeah, not the image of the Buddha, but, I have to separate from my old scrapbooks or, all this ridiculous stuff. Verse 12, by giving up, sorrow is transcended. So that's what I was talking about when by giving up all, which doesn't necessarily mean all the possessions and people and external things. It means giving up all the self-centeredness, and giving up the fear, giving up the attachment. Yeah. Yeah, giving up our need for security and predictability, which are impossible to have anyway. Yeah, by giving all that up, sorrow is transcended. Yeah, because then the mind isn't afraid. Yeah. By giving up all, sorrow is transcended. And my mind will realize the sorrowless state. That means nirvana. It is best that I now give everything to all beings in the same way as I shall at death. So we're going to separate from it at death, get rid of it now. Okay. I remember so much this one young man I had the privilege to know as he was dying in Singapore, and how he knew he was dying. He had terminal cancer. He was only like 30 or 31. And as he gave everything up, and his books were his most precious possession, and he even, gave his books away. And he made arrangements with his sister to distribute whatever savings he had to different practitioners and temples and so on. And the last thing he said when he was dying was he called his sister over and reminded her to give all those things to practitioners and temples and monasteries. It was quite moving, because he just, I'm going to give up. Yeah, I'm going on alone, and here it is, and I got to create merit by doing it. Okay, having given this body up for the pleasure of living beings, by killing, abusing, and beating it, may they always do as they please. Now somebody's going to read this verse and go, you got this. This is a recipe for allowing yourself to be abused. Yeah? Having given this body up for the pleasure of all living beings, okay, so I turn my body over to living beings If they want to kill it, it's okay. If they want to abuse it, it's okay. If they want to beat it, it's okay. May they always do as they please with this body, because I gave it to them. Okay. Now, do you feel part of your mind tightening about that? Especially if you've had abuse in the past? It's like, no, they cannot have my body. They cannot do what they please with my body. Yeah. I'm going to stand up and I'm setting limits and I'm going to be in control. And they cannot do this. Okay? Because this is my body and I suffer as a result if people kill, steal, abuse, or beat it. So what in the world is Shantideva talking about? He's saying, let myself be abused. No, I will not. Okay? So that's not what Shantideva is saying. To really feel this, to really think this, the precondition is a wish to be free of samsara and renunciation of the 5 aggregates which are our samsara. In other words, we're renouncing the suffering of the 5 aggregates. We're not going to be attached to them. Because that attachment is what causes us suffering and makes us create the causes of so much suffering. And so reciting this verse, you have to have that renunciation of samsara, and you also have to have compassion. It's like, I'm giving, this body up for sentient beings for whatever they need it for, and I'm not going to be attached to it. Whatever they do, they do. And I'm actually going to be happy because if they use it in a way that brings them happiness, that's the purpose of my life, is to do what brings happiness to others. So that's the mind of great love and great compassion. So that's the kind of mind we want to have when we say this. Now, I don't know about you, I do not have that kind of mind right now. But saying that verse and really thinking about it deeply helps me to generate renunciation of samsara and helps me to generate great love and great compassion. Okay? Because I can read that verse and say, wow, if I could be able to do that, what kind of freedom is there? What kind of joy is there if I could do this? And I want that freedom and I want that joy. So I have to give up my clinging and my craving. And really have an open heart that cares about others. Okay? So, that's what this kind of verse is really getting us to do. It's not a recipe for letting ourselves be abused. I mean, why would Shantideva teach us to do that when our own self-centeredness does that already? Okay, Shantideva is showing us the way out of that kind of stupidity. Okay, but when you think, if I didn't have attachment to my body, then you think of Daniel Pearl. Was it Pearl or Perlman? Pearl. who was a reporter, a journalist, who was kidnapped by, was it ISIS or Al Qaeda or one of those groups? He was kidnapped, and Jihadi John, okay, they made a video of beheading him, with Jihadi John narrating it in English with a perfect English accent. And I thought, because you never know what situation you're going to encounter in life. Yeah? I mean, if war breaks out, so many things can change so quickly. You never know what you're going to encounter. So I thought, if I were Daniel Pearlman, and I knew they were going to behead me, what kind of thought would I want to have in my mind? Yeah, I wouldn't want to have fear. And I wouldn't want to be grasping onto this body, because this body is just a bunch of vegetable goo. That's all it is, inside and out is vegetable goo. And why in the world would I hang on to a pot of vegetable goo? Yeah? Or, we've emptied the bucket in the kitchen with the leftovers from meals and things like that. Well, take that bucket, add some poo, add some pee, add some snot, add some vomit, and make it whatever you weigh right now. And then imagine carrying it around with you. With wrapping paper on top and a nice pretty bow. Yeah? And there you are carrying this bucket of, however many pounds around with you of just completely disgusting stuff wrapped up in silver paper with a pretty bow on top. Yeah. And, that's basically what we do with our body. So yes, we keep our body clean. We protect our body because we need it to practice the Dharma. It's the basis of our precious human life. But when it's time to separate from it, why cling onto it? When you have no choice at the time of death, why cling on to it? So it made me think, if I were Daniel Pearl, if I could just give up my body like that and just, okay, I'm giving it to these people. May it alleviate their suffering. Yeah. And whatever suffering they have that is causing them to do such a horrible negative action as torture somebody and murder them and film it to display to other people because they're so proud of doing it. Whatever suffering and ignorance and confusion they have inside that would make them do that, may my offering alleviate that in them. Yeah. May their minds turn to the Dharma, turn to virtue. Because now they get to carry around this bucket of vegetable goo with a silver bow, with a silver paper, but without the bow on top. Or the bow is separated from the bucket. And so I thought, that's the way I would want to be able to think if I were in that situation. So if I want to be able to think like that, then I need to practice thinking like that when I read these kind of verses in Shantideva. Not just romantically, oh yes, I give up everything because I'm so generous, but really thinking what it would be like to give that up and face my clinging and my resistance to it and start to work with that in my meditation. Because if I don't work with it now in my meditation, when death comes, I'm not going to be able to work with it then. Okay? And so, really thinking, yeah, if it gives them pleasure, I give. Because what use is it to me? Anyway, it's useful when I'm alive, but when it's time to die, my body is no longer useful. And it's the thing that actually betrays me because I still have my attachment to it. But what in the world am I attached to? Okay. Although they may play with my body and make it a source of jest and reproach, because I have given it to them, what is the use of holding it dear? Okay, so this is a good verse to think of, when it says, if they make my body a source of jest and reproach, think of when you were a kid and if other people teased you about some aspect of how you looked, or if you blamed yourself for how you looked as a kid when looks were so important. Remember high school? Yeah? Remember how important it was how you looked in high school and how many hours you would spend, like, I have a pimple there. How am I going to get rid of it? Paying attention to the stupidest things. And then in grade school, people teasing us about different things. Yeah? Or even people didn't tease us, things we didn't like. I remember, this is how ungrateful I was as a child. But my mother had bought me some dress. It was Venerable Semke's favorite color, purple. But I didn't like it. It was purple, and it had kind of thin red and white stripes on it. And it was so ugly. Yeah, I thought. Nobody else told me it was ugly. I thought it was ugly. And I didn't want to wear it to school. Yeah. And I had some ugly shoes that matched it. I can't remember what the shoes looked like. But they were ugly too, because not everybody was wearing those kind of shoes. And you want to wear the kind of shoes everybody's wearing. And how much suffering it caused me when I had to wear that dress to school. And how on the way walking home, I would deliberately drag the front of my shoes along the asphalt and gravel to scuff them up, because I knew that when the shoes were scuffed and torn, my mother would throw them away, and then I would be free of them. So not at all thinking of where did these things come from and the effort of other sentient beings to make them, and how hard my parents worked to get the money to pay for these things. I was completely oblivious. All I cared about was I just didn't like this. And then, if kids made fun of you for how you looked at school, or you didn't like something, or, remember in school when it was PE time, this is elementary school, well, also into middle school, and you had two teams and they took turns choosing the players who's gonna, do you remember that? And you were like always next to the last player or next to the next last player because, you know, you had poor hand-eye coordination. And it's like, oh, there's a ball coming. What am I supposed to do? Yeah. Like, oh, the ball's not there. It's over here. Oh, yeah. And how embarrassing it was to always be, you know, the last or second to the last kid chosen to be on the team. Yeah. Venerable Thubten was probably the first one. And
Teachers were smarter than that. They didn't have teams picked that way.
they didn't have you pick teams that way?
Just to set the record straight, I hated PE all through school. I quit it as soon as I could. I hated it. And I have not good with baseball. I got concussions from that. But in our school, when I did go to PE, they never picked teams that way. The teachers were smarter than that. That's just me. It's just unskillful in my book.
Yeah.
Nobody should be put through that.
Yeah. Well, my school, that's the way they did it. Yeah. So just, how did I get off on that? Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's an interesting thing in this verse. You just give up your body. And if people want to make fun of it, if they want to ridicule it, if they want to tease it, you know, whatever they want to do, it's fine. You know, I've given it to them. It's for their use. Okay. And then we don't have any attachment to it. Now, mind you, we've already given our body to the Buddha. Yeah. How many times have we done the inner offering prayer? Have you ever sincerely, when you've done the inner offering, the mandala, inner mandala prayer, you know, have you really felt like you've given your body to the Buddha? My body, wealth, and enjoyments, I give without any sense of loss. It says it right there. Have we been paying attention? Okay. So we've already given our body to the Buddha. Yeah. So when we give our body to the Buddha, what we're saying is, I am dedicating my life to doing what, you know, accords with what the Buddha is teaching us. Yeah. Which means I am dedicating my life and my body, which is the basis of my life, to benefiting sentient beings, because that's the most important thing that to the Buddha is to benefit sentient beings. So I've already given my body to the Buddha. I've already dedicated it to benefit sentient beings. So now here, if I have to give it up, you know, I give it up. Let whatever they do with it is okay. It's no longer mine. Yeah. Because after we die, yeah, you think you're going to be up on some cloud looking down and, oh, there's my body. Yeah. How do I look lying in my coffin? That's not going to happen. Okay. Oh, they didn't comb my hair right. Yeah. They put my Zen on backwards. Put it on so it's over this sleeve. You know, don't these people at mortuaries know how to put on robes properly? Yeah. I mean, who wants to be thinking about that? Anyway, we'll be well distracted with other things at that time. Okay, so because I have given it up to them, what is the use of holding it dear? Yeah, So we take care of our body, we keep it healthy, we keep it clean, we protect it from harm, but not out of self-centeredness, but out of the thought of, I need this in order to work for the benefit of others. So I take care of it so that it works well, and I can use it to benefit living beings. Verse 15, therefore, I shall let them do anything to it that does not cause them any harm. And when anyone encounters me, may it never be meaningless for them. Okay, so I shall let them do anything to it that does not cause them harm. So, yeah, we're seeing that, if they abuse it, if they kill it, and so on and so forth, that could cause them harm because they're creating the negative karma of, taking a life. So we can see that although from our side we are willing to give up our life, we're also praying that we don't want our body to be the object with which other people create negative karma. Okay, so we're making this caveat here. I'm giving it away without attachment, and may they not use it in a way that will harm them by making them create negative karma. Okay, but we don't use that as an excuse to not give our body. Okay. Okay, so we want them, we're happy to give our body, but we want them to use it for something that will actually benefit them, not something that will harm them. And then, and when anyone encounters me, may it never be meaningless for them. So that's like the verse that we often recite after the Tara prayer, after the Tara practice. May anyone who sees, hears, talks about, remembers me, like that. May their minds be free from all suffering. May their minds have Dharma realizations. And wouldn't that be nice if somehow, this body of vegetable goo could benefit sentient beings by somebody looking at it and it being a source of inspiration, not because it was a beautiful body, but because, seeing us reminded them of something virtuous and something good in their lives, and it eased their suffering. Kind of like when you see His Holiness, There's many people, people have told me that they're not Buddhists, they know nothing about Buddhism, but they got a ticket when His Holiness is giving a public talk in, who knows where. And they're sitting there and His Holiness walks in and all of a sudden they feel overwhelmed and they start to weep. They've never heard His Holiness speak. They aren't Buddhists, nothing, And it touches, when somebody has practiced very deeply, just seeing them like that moves people. And so wouldn't it be nice if when other people saw us, it would move them in the same way? Instead of them seeing us and, oh, that's the person who cheated me, and that's the person who ruined my reputation, talked behind my back, and, made fun of me when I was 5 years old on the playground, who I've never forgiven since. Instead of other beings seeing us and having that kind of reaction, being able to see us and having a different reaction, you know. And so I don't know about you, but when I walk and I encounter our deer and they just stand there and they let me walk right by them, you know, maybe at the very end they move, maybe they don't, you know, it's like, oh, seeing these robes has given the deer a sense of safety. Yeah. And may they not trust the hunters like that. But it gives me some feeling of what that verse is saying. You know, may anybody who contacts me, you know, be inspired with some virtuous state of mind that will benefit them. If in those who encounter me a faithful or an angry thought arises, may that eternally become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. So you may have heard in teachings, they say that even if we get angry at a high bodhisattva, it still is good for us in the sense that it creates a link with them so they can benefit us in future lives, even though we create horrible, destructive karma by getting angry at that bodhisattva. Okay? So here, you know, why does it work that way? Because bodhisattvas make this kind of prayer. Yeah. So if those who encounter me, you know, if a faithful thought arises, if they are inspired, you know, like people sing His Holiness, you know, fantastic. May people have that kind of inspirational thought when they see me. Or if they happen to dislike me, or I'm doing some kind of project and they disapprove of what I'm doing, and they look at me and they're angry and upset and criticize, you know, how people react to me is not what is important. The kind of karma they create is important. So from my side, whether they react towards me with faith and trust or with aversion and anger, yeah, may that create a karmic link so that I may eternally become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. Okay? So may all the people, you know, sometimes you think of all the people whose feelings you've hurt, or people you've had misunderstandings with, or people who projected all sorts of stuff on you and disliked you because of it, even though from your side you didn't do anything. So taking all of that, and may all those people who looked at me in that kind of way, instead of my feeling insulted or offended or unappreciated, which are all thoughts focused on me, I, my, and mine. Instead of that, yeah, you know, however they react to me, may I have the thought that I can become eternally the source for fulfilling their wishes. Yeah? That at some time in some life, whenever the karmic circumstances are purified and are suitable, may I really be a benefit to that person, no matter how they look at me right now. Okay? So this is really good to think about when we watch how our mind reacts when people look at us in certain ways. You know, are we offended? Are we insulted? Are we angry? Yeah. I remember one time in Singapore walking down the street and a car drove past, and the guy's like this, with this staring at me, driving the car forward, as if he had seen a ghost, like a woman with no hair. It's like, what in the world is that? And at that moment, to be able to say, may his seeing me be the cause of us having a karmic connection, and may I benefit him in the future. Yeah. Or one time, this happened in Singapore too, somebody had asked me for Sanghadana, and I remember walking in the restaurant, and she said, "Are you aware that everybody's staring at you?" And I said, "No, I've been ordained long enough to get over that." But she was very aware that everybody was staring at the person that she was with. Yeah, but again, it's a good way at those times, even they're staring at me, may I be of benefit to them. Yeah, may it cause them to wonder, who in the world this person is or whatever. And it reminds me also of another story. And this is why I think it's good to wear our robes wherever we go. Is one of my friends from Dharamsala went back to New York City, and he was very unhappy in New York City. This was many years ago. He couldn't find a Dharma group, to go to. He lived very far away from one of the Dharma groups, and he felt so isolated. And he told me one time he was in a New York subway. The subways where they have different layers because all of the interchanges, and you can't count how many subway lines there are there. But he was standing on a platform waiting for his subway, and across the station, he saw somebody in maroon robes. And he said he just lit up, and he took off and ran to that person, before that person got on his subway and went somewhere, because that's how much it triggered in him, like, oh, a Dharma practitioner, somebody I can relate to and count on. And he just went zoom up the stairs, across the platform, down the stairs, finally made it to the monk. Yeah. And so, you can see different people's react in different ways. And I'm just used to people staring. It doesn't bother me at all. Some people it bothers, but it doesn't bother me. But I found actually that it opens the door sometimes to have a good conversation with people. Yeah. They come up and, do you know the Dalai Lama? Do you believe in rebirth? And I don't care if on airplanes they say, what would you like to drink, sir? It's like I can laugh at that. I'm sure some people feel quite offended by it, but I think it's kind of cute, Don't you think it's cute? Yeah. What? Polite. Yeah, they're trying to be polite. And it's like, what would you like to drink, sir? Yeah. Or the person who comes up behind you while you're waiting in line, and the woman who comes up behind you and puts their hand on your shoulder and says, don't worry, dear, your hair will grow back when the chemo's over. It's like these people, they're trying to express a kind of intention. And I imagine some people would get quite offended, but But I don't. I just, it's so sweet. Yeah. And then it's hard telling them, actually, I'm a Buddhist nun. Then they feel embarrassed. And I have to know it's okay. Don't worry. But to train our mind that no matter how people react to us, to wish them well. Okay. May all who say bad things to me or cause me any other harm, and those who mock and insult me, have the fortune to fully awaken. Okay, so all those who dump out their own hostility, frustration, upset, through uncontrolled speech, and they dump it all out on me, okay, saying bad things, cursing at me, insulting me, you look at sometimes the press interviews, and how Trump or whoever treat the interviewers, Hey, you, sit down, or, take off that mask. Don't talk to me with a mask on. Or however, or how people, they're frustrated at their job. You work for what is it, customer service at Amazon. Imagine having that job. And, people are going to get so upset with you and so angry. And, I ordered, 15 gallons of mouthwash, and you sent me 14, and I need all 15 by tomorrow, and what's wrong with your company? He's the richest guy in the world, and he can't send me the right number of gallons of mouthwash. Who needs 15 gallons of mouthwash? Somebody who has a big mouth. People take their frustration out. You're driving along, somebody gives you the finger. You go to a protest march and somebody throws something at you. Instead of having a negative feeling towards that person, may all who say bad things to me or cause me any other harm, and those who mock and insult me, have the fortune to be fully awakened. So imagine at one of the protests in Portland, because they're still going on over 100 days now. And, sometimes the people being so rude, not to mention killing each other, but being so rude. Or imagine how it often happens, the police, tear gassing a crowd that is peacefully assembled. And so instead of getting angry, yes, you have to run away and you have to pour milk on your face. But, may those people who have this awful job of having to act like this, may they attain full awakening, and in future lives, may I be able to help them on the path. Imagine for a minute a whole protest where all the protesters did that. That would be quite amazing, don't you think? This is the way bodhisattvas practice. Somebody throws some tear gas or a paintball or whatever it is at you, and you bow to them. Yeah. It reminds me of a story I heard about Zopa Rinpoche, because he practices like this. I was going to say he's a bit extreme, but no, he's not. He practices according to what Shantideva says. So somebody once went to Rinpoche and said, I have a new car, and my neighbor is this old man, and he dented he was parking next to me, and he scratched my car. And I went over to talk to him about it because the color paint that on the scratch was the color of his car. And he just blew up at me. And I said to him, what can I do? I wanted to talk with him about it. And he just, it blew up. And Rinpoche said, give him a present. Huh? This guy scratched my car. I have to pay a few $100s to repair it. And you're telling me to go give him a present? So they went home and thought about it and talked to their Dharma friends about it. And, thought, okay, let's give it a try. So they knew that this old man played golf. So they went out and got some golf balls. Yeah. And they went over and rang his doorbell. And he came to the door, and they gave him the doorbells and said, gave him the golf balls and said, we thought you would like this. And he was shocked, but he took them, And then later on, they had a pleasant kind of encounter, and I can't remember if the guy volunteered to pay for it or whatever it was. I don't know if I told the story exactly, all the details right, but this was the gist of it. Yeah? So, yeah. When we were organizing life as a Western Buddhist nun in Bodh Gaya, yeah, you were there. So you remember my co-organizer. Yes. So we sat next to each other in ordination line, and we were co-organizers. And she was a tough person. She was one of the people who somebody once said, boy, that nun is so angry. And the person that person said it to said, you should have known her before she met the Dharma. I mean, so she and I had some difficulties interacting as co-organizers of this event. And what I did, because we sat next to each other, and I was going to sit next to her, for probably until I died, whenever we were in big assemblies, that was our ordination order. So I just thought, I'm going to make, how in our sadhanas we offer tormas to the different spirits, different beings, and also to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So I just thought, well, I'm going to give her presents whenever I can, and it's like a torma offering. Yeah? So I shared my chocolate with her, which you know what a sacrifice that is. And, tried to do little things like that. And I don't know what effect it had on her, but it helped my mind a lot. Yeah. So, anyway, there we are. May all those who mock and insult me have the fortune to fully awaken. Yeah? So, may we actually think like that and behave like that. So, we'll stop here for today.
is the virtue of His Holiness's mind that causes this experience of peace or joy when people see him?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And then what is it in them, in the person's mind, that causes them to feel peace or joy?
I think they pick up on, and I don't like this word, His Holiness's vibe. Okay. But, they pick up on something. And everybody is searching for goodness in the world. And when you happen to encounter somebody who radiates that goodness, it moves you.